Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of Startup Talk. And today we have a bit of a special episode because today's guest is going to share her startup story in a market filled with giants, as in giant companies. So we're going to talk about what to do when your market is dominated by a few big players and how do you as a smaller business leverage your uniqueness. So if you want to grow your small business in a market with giants, then today's episode is for you. If you're new to the show, welcome. My name is Saskia and I help you be the extraordinary entrepreneur you're meant to be. And one way that I do this is by hosting Startup Talk. Every week, I host a new guest and we'll cover a topic that will help you grow as an entrepreneur and start up or level up your business. So join us. We're live here every Thursday at 7 o'clock. So this time on Facebook and YouTube. And if that time doesn't work for you, fear not. You can rewatch the episodes on those channels or on the website of the Entrepreneur Suite. And it's also available as a podcast on Spotify and iTunes. So however you're tuning in, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And share your thoughts in the comment section. Whether you're listening in live or watching the replay, that section is there for a reason. Let us know what you think. Now, let me tell you about our guest of today, which is the amazing Elizabeth Becker. She's the founder and CEO of HiBnb, a peer-to-peer listing platform offering accommodations and activities for cannabis enthusiasts. HiBnb is different than any other marketplace. All of the listings in their community allows and encourages guests to get high, play high, and stay high. So here to tell her story today, let's give a warm welcome to Elizabeth Becker. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Saskia.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I heard your story about HiBnb and I was like, I just have to have you on the show. So I'm so happy that you're here today.
That's great to be here.
So
I have quite a story to share.
I read it. So I was really looking forward to this episode to also just share this with our viewers. So let's start with the most difficult question. How are you today?
I'm alive.
Oh, I love that. That's even better than good, or it's fine. It's like
it's just how it is. Running a startup, you have to be in the moment all the time and present. And there's a lot of ups and a lot of downs. So I can say right now, here I am.
I love that. So you are the founder and CEO of HiBnb. Tell me, how did that all start?
Let's see. How did HiBnb start? So Canada legalized cannabis in 2018. And for many years, I've been a cannabis enthusiast, but also a cannabis advocate, acknowledging how alcohol is so accepted by society and integrated into our day-to-day lives in such an easy way. Yet cannabis is, a Schedule I drug, equivalent to heroin. But there was all this propaganda back in the 1930s that told people that smoking cannabis would make you want to kill your best friend and turn you into a crazy lunatic. And so there was a lot of propaganda and stigma that was created that isn't necessarily the truth. And so for many years, I looked at cannabis and I really couldn't understand how alcohol could be accepted. And it when abused, it creates such violence. And cannabis is not accepted and stigmatized, and when abused causes introspection. It really doesn't have the as externally negative effects. So I was very
if I can tag in on that, true. If there are enough people who, if they get really drunk, they get angry drunk. But there aren't so much people that if they get high, get angry high. I mean, I've never met an angry high person. They're always still so laid back.
No, if somebody gets too high, they're just sitting there. They never project outwards. They're never angry at other people. They never hurt other people. So I really couldn't understand the difference between these two. And so when Canada legalized cannabis, and I was so excited for that and for the opportunity for business, although I didn't know how I would find, an access to business within it. One of the things that I noticed that it was legal to purchase cannabis, but nothing in society changed. So there was nowhere where you were allowed to smoke publicly. There were no social events where you could interact and mix and mingle. and that included cannabis. All that changed was that you could go in and purchase cannabis and the government could tax it. And so I really thought, well, that's not what it should look like. If it's legal, if it is truly legal, which is what it is here in Canada, it should be normalized. It should be okay to talk about it. It should be in the open with no stigma, no shame, no judgment around it. So I saw an opportunity after speaking to so many cannabis enthusiasts who were so excited about the legalization and wanting to be open about it, wanting to come out of the closet, no more shame or hiding about the fact I'm a cannabis user. There's nothing wrong in saying that. And and the idea of creating a website that's similar to Airbnb, but specifically for cannabis enthusiasts, so that you can stay in accommodations where you won't get kicked out. Because currently, if somebody's smoking cannabis, if you go on Airbnb, there's no filter that says cannabis allowed. And a lot of cannabis users get asked to leave, or they run into friction because nobody likes the smell. So it's just to be sort of out in the forefront about it. And also, it's not just accommodations, it's activities and experiences. Like somebody's having a poker game, somebody says learn about cannabis and walk an alpaca, somebody's doing a fishing trip, a waterfall hike. So there's all these different kinds of events and experiences and activities that are for the cannabis consumer.
Okay. Yeah. So I saw the website, and I think that's really amazing. You can go to a belly dance workshop and smoke cannabis there. So it's more than just having an accommodation. It's really about connecting with the community. So how did you find this as your thing, to be the Airbnb for cannabis users? I know with Airbnb, indeed, you always get the question, do you smoke? And if so, then please don't come to our accommodation. But when did you have that spark, like, oh wait, what if becoming an Airbnb for cannabis users? How did you come to that point?
So at first, when I was considering it, I thought, oh, well, it's more of a gimmick, really, and I didn't really consider it seriously. Especially because somebody else had already done it. There's Bud and Breakfast out of Colorado. There's something called Weed Rentals. So it wouldn't be the first. And my very first reaction was, oh, it's really just a gimmick. But as I started looking into the business of it, looking into where the market is, if there's a need for this, what it would cost to build it, what my pain points of entry would be, and what the reward could be, I started getting very excited to realize, it leaped out from me. I said, this has legs. This business has legs. And the more I looked into it, the more doors opened in front of me. And it was like a kid in the candy shop. I'd wake up in the morning and say, oh, I can't wait to see what's going to open today. And all the people I come into connection with, if they are cannabis enthusiasts, they come to me and they say, I love what you're doing. How can I help? So, starting this business with so many people coming saying, how can I help? How can I help? I love what you're doing. There's so much support and momentum behind it that it just got bigger and bigger.
I love that, especially having such a great community that wants to make something successful out of this. Did you also notice, given the taboo that's still on cannabis, did you also notice resistance in other people, or people are like, why would you do that? And how do you deal with that?
I find that people either get it or they don't. So it's for some people, it's just like, aha, of course. And people come to me every day saying, I love what you're doing. It's, this is going to be huge. Thank you so much. Some people say, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for legitimizing the cannabis community. And some others are like, I don't get it. Why don't they just go to Airbnb? If they smoke outside, then let them just take an Airbnb. So there's so many people that just don't get it. And so, the first steps were very, very friendly because it was sort of within the cannabis community. But now, as I'm getting a little bit larger and trying to enter the more mainstream world, there is some resistance. There's some people, the stigma remains. And luckily, I'm not just a business person, but I am, very passionate advocate for cannabis. And so I'm happy to be on the front lines to try to bust down those stereotypes. And that's really what we have to do, right? Is to educate people on cannabis and cannabis users because it's not necessarily the stereotype that they have in their mind. In fact, 2/3 of all cannabis users use cannabis for health reasons. They use it
Really?
they use it for anxiety and depression and sleeplessness and physical health ailments.
Really? And that's 2/3, you say? That's
2/3.
That's more than I expected. Yeah, I thought most people will still do it for, for just leisure, just, having a chill evening, so to speak. I didn't know it was already such a way to manage your health as well. But it makes sense because it helps with anxiety, it clears your mind, it puts you in a state of ease, and that can really help a lot of people.
It uplifts your spirits a little bit. It does help with depression.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. So you had the idea, and then how did you get started? Did you just buy how do you build a website how do you build a platform like HiBnb? How did you do that?
Well, the first thing that I did was start working through the business model to run through the numbers and figure out what targets I would need to hit, how much money I would need to raise, and what are the, what needs to be completed. And it synchronized with me. It resonated with me because I come from film and television as a writer and director. I've spent many years trying to have a voice and connect with an audience and write a script and then put together a budget and work with technical people and work with creative people to build a physical form that goes out in the world. So I didn't know anything about websites, though. That's the only thing. So I basically first branded the company. I figured out the voice. I got the logo together. I had my business model in place, and then I started researching how to physically make this happen. What kind of a site I would need. I had some very strong instinctual ideas about the site. There's a lot of people where you can go to a site. There's all sorts of Airbnb ripoffs that you can buy off the shelf that are websites, and you just put on your own logo and change the colors. But I felt very strongly that wouldn't work for us because what we need is a customized experience. A number of things. We need something that's going to be customized to the cannabis consumer so that it actually is different than something else that's out there. But we also needed to have the features that somebody would expect to have in place if they are going to Airbnb. And that's not an easy access point because Airbnb is such a huge company that the bar is really high to meet all of those things. And I didn't want just an accommodations site. I wanted it to be very strong on the experiences and activities. And that's only two sides of our three-sided business, because the other part of it is selling advertising and advertising for the licensed producers and licensed dispensaries, because the marketing restrictions are there where they cannot advertise and market themselves in public. There needs to be an age gate because they don't want to appeal to minors. And so on our site, they can advertise freely because we are only open to people in Canada 19 years and older.
Oh, I didn't even realize that was part of the business. I saw indeed on your website, you can also buy ad space, but I didn't know it was restricted with the age limit. So so you have a three-sided business model, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
And to me, that was the icing on the cake, right? It wasn't just having the accommodations and the experiences, but to know that there's such a need for the advertising to be there, and it is sort of two businesses in one.
Yeah, then you really bring it together, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now, in the early days of Airbnb, I read that there was a lot of people misusing the platform. So, for instance, people who rented an accommodation and then threw a whole party in it, and then the next day were gone, and the host was thanked and had a thrashed out place. Did you have similar challenges in the beginning of HiBnb?
No, not yet. I mean, we're priding ourselves on being a community and a responsible community where users can report one another, report a host, make sure there's no illegal activity going on. But we also have screening and verification service that's going to cut down fraudulent use. So we can verify who the people are coming, who they are, where they're coming from, and that they have to be accountable to some degree to damage. So Airbnb, you can just use a name, anybody's name, and you're not accountable at all. Once you're checked out, they don't even know who you are. So we do have the screening and verification, and that's going to reduce the occurrences. But people are people, and there may be some times that people want to use it and have a party. We do have a mechanism on our site where parties are allowed if the host wants to allow it.
Yeah, but then it's really if the host wants to allow it, so he knows, or he or she knows, like, hey, there is something happening as well. Yeah. Okay. So you then started this platform. The platform was live. When was the first time you realized, like, oh wow, this is really gaining legs. This is gaining traction?
I guess when people started putting on their listings, right? When we went live, we did a soft launch where we went live with our site, although we hadn't finished building it entirely. And when people started putting their own listings on, and they're so creative with the listings, that was really when I felt it's not just mine, right? I built it as a tool for other people. And I should say, I didn't answer your question completely last time. So how did I make the site? I started researching, and I built a prototype. And then I had my business plan and my prototype, and I started raising funds in order to build the actual site. And that's been a learning curve, the building of the site.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's especially those kind of sites. There's a lot of technical background. You can't just buy or just set up a nice storefront and then just hope that it will all be fine. You really need to have, especially with cannabis users, or maybe not especially, but you really need to have a good solid back end that you connect the right people to the right people. And also with that verification step, you said earlier that people are accountable. I can imagine that there's so much work going in building such a website. What was the main lesson learned in that?
I've changed as a person since I've become an entrepreneur. And the main lesson is that I have to micromanage. I can't expect that the people that I'm working with care about it as much as I do. And if there is any, disalignment between what I'm saying and what they receive, basically if I don't double check at every point how it's coming, then I'm going to end up with something that's not what I wanted. And it's going to cost more to fix it in the long run. So I've had to be very, very specific in my designs, in my requests, in my checkpoints, in my follow-up. So it's made me extremely meticulous.
That must be brutal. Being I know how challenging it can be to I always try to let go a bit, like, dear team, go and have your own creative input in this as well. But I can imagine you're having the vision of HiBnb, you're having this dream, you can already see it, it's just making it the real thing, and then getting people to exactly create that. I can imagine that will have given you some sleepless nights, I guess.
But I also want to leave space for the people who are creative to invite the other person's creative expression so that they can contribute to it. And that's really what the fine line is, right? It's like allowing somebody to be their best without suppressing that, but yet not being surprised when it comes out. And because their vision and how they want to create may not be aligned with mine. It may not be the same. What one person's objectives are may be different than mine. So I have learned the hard way. There's been a lot of people who are so excited about this idea and want to help any way they can, and then I start paying them, and they're doing what they think is how it is in their mind, which might be different.
Yeah, which might be different. Okay, yeah. So then I can also imagine that you're at a certain moment say, like, okay, I want to have it exactly this way, so I'll micromanage it just to make sure that it is that way.
Well, in the end, it is my vision, and I also want to keep an open mind so that I can always improve and not be a closed-minded person. Luckily, I come from a background where I'm working with creative and technical at the same time, and so that's the line I'm always trying to really straddle. But it's given me a lot more confidence in my own, because usually when I allow people more space, and I end up realizing, no, my original instinct here was right. But yes, I've had to draw it out on a piece of paper and scan it and send it to the designer and say, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes that's the only way to communicate. How do you communicate something? You have to do it through illustration, usually, or mapping things out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing is that I've had to allow the business and the site to evolve a little bit. When I first started out, it was much smaller, and it's gotten much bigger. But I've started connecting the dots here and there, and so it's grown.
Yeah, I can imagine when starting your own business, a business such as this, it will automatically also trigger a lot of personal growth for you as an entrepreneur on how do you bring this out into the world. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about your launch, because you already said earlier you had a soft launch. How do you gain traction because it was a topic that still had some taboo, but it had a community. You were known within the community, but how did you get traction for your launch?
Well, we're still working on it. Our launch is upcoming, and we're raising funds for it right now for our seed round. I think that the title of this is about going against the giants, and that's really the issue is that to create this business so that when people come to it, all of their expectations are met, and there's listings on it so that they don't turn it and go back. Sorry, that siren is distracting me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I can mute myself. Then you can talk further.
That's okay. Well, no problem.
Sorry, that's the thing. I live next to a hospital, so I will. Whenever I hear a new sign, I'll try to mute myself. But you know why I'm muted. Sorry, continue. We were talking about your launch, and you're in your seed round right now.
Right, and so to market to reach that mass of people all at once is not an easy feat, and we're continuing to work on it, work with consultants, be looking at all different scenarios and acting on them at the same time. Right now we're doing a great job using the media in Canada. We've been on TV, we've been on the front page of the newspaper, we've had coverage in Australia, I've had coverage in Japan, and that's huge. So that's great exposure for us. And we were just on the Dragon's Den, which is the equivalent of Shark Tank. That goes across the country. So we're starting to get known in Canada, but then shortly we'll be growing into the United States, and it's not that easy to get that kind of exposure without millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, I can imagine. So
challenge now. When I first started this, the challenge was building the website, and then now the new challenge is the marketing. But we're relying a lot on influencers as well.
Okay, because indeed, as you said, the topic of today is going up against the giant, and I can imagine that Airbnb is a huge giant. I don't know how big they are in Canada, but they're huge in the US. How do you notice do you notice their competition already? Because you offer something that Airbnb doesn't, or it's the same but different,
Yeah. So what exactly is the question? How do I notice the competitor?
Yeah. How do you? Well, the question I want to work through is how do you go up against a giant like Airbnb?
Well, you're either really stupid or really brave. I'm probably a mixture.
Or very confident.
I don't know who else would do this. I'm a bit of a risk taker, and I'm very passionate and very instinctual. So my approach is just to have a core group of people who are supporting it. I know that there's the market for it. It's already been established, and just to keep building as strong as we can.
Yeah. Well, and I do believe that you have some unique advantages that an Airbnb doesn't have. I mean, sure, they are big, they have a lot of budget, but you as a smaller company, maybe you can pivot more easily, and I think you have a more genuine connection with the cannabis community. Do you agree with that?
That is what we have. We have the genuine connection with the cannabis community. Absolutely. And that's going to be valuable. As soon as cannabis legalizes in the US, the federal laws around banking will change, and that may open up the market for Airbnb and for other competitors. So our interest is to get a stake within that engaged community in advance and before that happens, and so that we may be a target for an acquisition.
Yeah, I love that. So you're building HiBnb, and then last year COVID happened. there must have been an impact over there.
Huge impact, yeah. And then it's still happening. I didn't see the third wave coming. Like when the first wave came, I thought, okay, this is okay. It's probably a blessing in disguise because we could take more time to work on the refinements of the site, make sure that it functions, make sure that it works and reliable, and expand the features. You know, we had done a round of pre-seed funding that was great. You know, we raised $500,000 in pre-seed funding, so it allowed us to build the site out and to work as slowly but with quality. And then the third wave hit, and by now it's like, okay, well, that's enough time. We need to really start seeing the traction, and it's taken a long time. We're actually here in Toronto. Just tomorrow is the lockdown ends. Tomorrow we're allowed to leave our house and the restaurant's open. So it's been months and months and months of lockdown. And so there has not been a lot of activity here, and I've been chomping at the bit. So the whole tourism industry was totally annihilated with COVID, starting to come back in the States quite robustly, but hasn't yet in Canada.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I recognize it's the same here. I think technically we're still kind of in lockdown. Things are getting open again, but tourism is still not really a thing. You can travel a bit here and there, but it's, of course, you need to be vaccinated or you need to have a negative test. And I can imagine that a lot of the touristic platforms have been affected quite broadly on that. But I can also imagine, since you have that triple whammy business model, did that help? Did that save at least a bit of the revenue?
No, we're still working through it. I mean, the advertising didn't come in right out of the gate because they need to see the traffic, and the traffic's not there because everybody's locked in their homes.
Of course,
so
yeah.
It's been a little bit of catch-22 for us, but we're just hitting that point where things are changing. And it's very exciting right now. Every day we're getting at least 10 new subscribers and 2 new listings, and the growth is right ahead of us.
Wow.
We also had a fabulous consultant that we worked with out of Spain, who is an expert in the short-term rentals and hospitality field. So with their guidance, we were able to grow. And this is the building of the foundation that we were able to grow to really compete with Airbnb. And it's nice to have that industry behind us. It's the hospitality industry. In fact, I was awarded the 2021 Innovator Disruptor Award in the short-term rentals.
Really? Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great. The first thing that I said in my welcome speech was thank you for acknowledging the destigmatization of cannabis, because it's true. And this was through a public vote, and people want to see this new market. Everybody's very, very excited about a brand new market opening up that hasn't been touched before. In hospitality, there's all these different websites that you can book lodging, right? And they're all the same. They're all reaching the same people. But the future of the short-term rental industry, and people are starting to book more in short-term rentals all the time, not in hotels, is that there are these little niche groups, right? There's for the LGBTQ community, for sporties, for Italian speakers, right? There's all these little niche markets, but behind those rental platforms, it's kind of the same industry that's pushing through the same inventory, really, to that niche and to that niche and to that niche. And so working together with these consultants, they've helped us access that sort of undercurrent, which is growing to go against Airbnb, right? Airbnb currently has the monopoly. Well, this undercurrent is supporting all these different niche markets, including HiBnb, so that together we're going to get, we're going to take back some of that share from Airbnb. So
yeah,
also
because you have a more fragmented market.
Yeah, more fragmented market, but it's strong because it's got strong foundation. And so that required more money for us, and that's our ability to change, to pivot, right? Is I saw that we need to be able to have access to that inventory coming in, so that when Portugal opens, we can be there with 200 listings in a week, because automatically through the back end of our site, we're able to onboard the property managers in there who say that they're okay to support it. And if they do, it's really just the click of a button, plus a few other details that's going to show, how their property is different within our site, what their attitudes are towards cannabis. Is cannabis permitted inside the unit or on a balcony, or is it only outside the unit? Are there cannabis accessories? Is the host sharing cannabis? Like, so those are basically the differences between a HiBnb experience and somebody else's experience. But being able to integrate with all of those different property management systems so that we can, have thousands of listings and tens of thousands of listings. That's what we need to do to be taken seriously. Because if I'm traveling, I go to a site and they only have 10 listings, I'm not going to take, I'm not going to book there, because I don't want my trip to be held back because they don't have a location that I want to be in. So there were certain, barriers to entry that I knew I needed with this company, and that's one of it. It's I need the inventory, and gosh, that's a huge fight to make sure that I have those relationships, that we're appealing to all the property managers, that we have the technical integration in. So that's speaking to the hosts, but then also speaking to the guests. We want to make sure that we have all of the things that they're looking for too.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the main challenges of any platform. You need both sides, but you have to have one side in order to have the other side, right? So you need a host and you need guests, and you need a minimum amount of hosts, but you also need a minimum amount of guests. So you have to build that up even before you're already there. So how did you tackle that? So that's really about connecting with that community, asking people, hey, would you like to sign up? Is there, do you use referrals?
We use referrals, absolutely. I mean, but that's the part that's slower. That's the fight. What you're talking about is building it up incrementally. That's the battle. And with COVID, that's been very challenging for us. But yes, we take referrals. We're integrated in the community. We're going out on all the Facebook pages for cannabis community, and also short-term rental host communities within each of the. Right now, it's focused across Canada. And very soon we're doing that into the United States, into all of those little niche communities, finding the cannabis consumers, because they're the ones that are passionate and so committed. They're the ones that are saying, how can I help any way through? And so we're partnering with them. We're also partnering with small cannabis companies, like cannabis adjacent companies, like cannabis accessories, services related to cannabis, and doing cross exposure. So we're advertising for them and they're advertising for us, and we have access to all of their network. And so that's how we're growing our network as well.
Okay, so that's really about strategic partnerships then. How Absolutely. Did you find those? How did you find these strategic partners? I bet via the community, but how do you know if a partner is the right one for you then?
Well, it's got to be a win-win.
Absolutely.
It has to be a win-win. And you have to respect and value what it is that they're offering. Those are the best strategic partners, the ones where we can help you and you can help us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. So tell me, where do you see HiBnb in 5 years? How big are you guys then?
Well, we'll be all over North America, because the US will have legalized on a federal level. Mexico's already legal. So our projections show us at having, in 3 years, 30,000 listings, and we believe that those are modest in North America alone. I think that by 5 years, we should start to be moving into the European market. I think that Portugal and Spain are getting closer. Right now they're legal for medicinal use and not recreational use. And it's a question as to whether or not we can be in those places, because obviously there are medicinal users who will need to have accommodations. But so to answer your question, in 5 years, we expect to have at least 50,000 listings through North America and Europe.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and if I understand you correctly, the main bottleneck over there is really the legislations in the different countries, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So when you're going back to the topic of today, when you're going up against a giant, what is one of the common myths that you notice that people have about that?
What's a myth that somebody has going up against a giant? All that I can think of as a myth is David and Goliath, right? The big giant.
Yeah.
There's a little guy with a slingshot.
Yeah, with a poking device.
Right underneath the legs of the giant.
Yeah.
I think in that myth, David won, right? He beat the giant.
And he beat the giant. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
we're not looking to beat the giant. We don't want the giant to die. We're
no,
just
it's
thinking
just finding about your.
the giant won't really care about us right now, you know. And what we're doing is coming in. It's actually great because we're coming in through the back door. They don't really care about us now. We're not a threat. But our focus is to get that database, is to have that engagement with the users that's significant enough that they see our value later, and hopefully a lot more. I mean, almost half of all people are cannabis consumers, at least in Canada.
Really?
And it's close to that in the U.S. So there's a lot of cannabis users. They don't talk about it, but you know that's really our hope, is to be appealing to the community of itself, so that if somebody's traveling and they can book on Airbnb or they can book on HiBnb, and if it's the same unit, kind of the same thing, but with different hosts, the cannabis community is going to want to book on HiBnb because there is an alliance to the community. Stay with like-minded people. And this is the same focus and intention that Airbnb had at the very beginning when they first started out. It was stay with community. Don't go to hotels because there is this sort of corporate sterile feel. And when you travel with locals, where you're going to have a warm welcome. And it was kind of like counterculture, really, is what Airbnb was when it started. But then Airbnb grew, and now it's this sterile corporate feeling because there's so many huge companies that have 60 listings. And I've traveled on Airbnb, and it's like it's not anybody's home. Nobody's ever really stayed there. And it has not been that experience that is that warm feeling where you connect with culture. And so that's what HiBnB has to offer, because at its very heart, like the very dedicated cannabis users, that's cannabis culture, because they can tell you what bars to go to, or like what coffee shops, or where to frequent in the city, you know, and it's a certain type of people. There's a lot of people who are growers, and on our site, the grower can document their cannabis. So the post says, yes, I'm sharing my cannabis. I grow it. Here's a picture of it. And this is what it is. These are the nutrients that I use. There's lots of people. That's a whole subculture. So people who grow, they're going to want to stay at other people's grows and try their cannabis. Right. So
and that's really a truly different experience. It's not just, you know, I used to try, I've traveled a bit with Airbnb, and indeed it's not about connecting with the community anymore. It's about, you know, people have a spare house or something that they don't rent out, but it's just more economical, beneficial to put it on Airbnb. So it's, you know, it's but having that experience as well with the community in a HiBnB, where it's like, hey, you can check out these bars, you can check out these people, you can check out my own personal grown cannabis. I mean, I can imagine that's amazing if you're a cannabis enthusiast.
Yeah, at its heart, that's what HiBnB has to offer. But there's, you know, if the host isn't an engaged cannabis consumer like that, there are hosts that just say, no, I support it. I may not be a cannabis consumer myself, but I don't mind if you smoke around my property, maybe not in my property, but around I have no judgment of you. So, and then there are other hosts who have the pool or the jacuzzi or the fireplace, because for cannabis consumers, or the pillow lounge. They want the pillow lounge.
I can imagine. That sounds amazing, the pillow lounge. Okay, so then earlier in the episode, you said that you have your product launch coming up. What can you tell me about that?
Well, I'm not going to say a hard date because we're running into some delays, and I think with technology that it happens often. But at this time, the delay is coming into the U.S. with our U.S. site. There's a lot of restrictions down there around banking and finance with cannabis, so it's taking us a little bit longer to have that launch. But we are planning for it in September of this year. An official launch on both sides of the border. Here in Canada, it's just been a soft launch so far. And we're looking for some partners to sponsor us to share with that, you know, with that launch. I think there's a win-win on both sides for that. So have our launch, and we'll have our integration by then. So we should have a lot of properties, and that's sort of my vision for where it needs to be. And we're on
September.
Yeah, you could reach us at Experience HiBnb on Instagram.
So
Facebook,
for the people,
or YouTube,
down below. So we've been talking so much about the website, and we haven't shared it yet. So people, definitely, if you're interested in using cannabis while traveling, check out HiBnb.ca, and then the US site will be .com, I guess.
It will be .us. HiBnb.us. Yeah, our master site will be HiBnb.life.
.life. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And somebody who's interested in cannabis, you could go to our YouTube page at Experience HiBnb, and we've created 2 web series. One of them is Ask Our Expert, where you can ask a cannabis sommelier any question that you want. So that's been fun. That's that's part of my commitment to the community and the normalization of cannabis, is just to start creating a dialogue and educating people around it so that we break the stigma.
Okay, so that's Experience HiBnb on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being on the show today. I think we had a great talk about how do you compete with a giant. I think the 2 main takeaways is that, first of all, have a genuine connection with the community and have that differentiating experience. Don't just be the corporate look and feel, but really connect with your community, know what these people want, and how can you give them the most amazing experience, so to speak. How do you give them the best experience for that community?
Yeah, and make sure it works in a microcosm first, and then expand.
Okay, so really start small and then grow from there. That sounds good. So thank you for joining us today. I really enjoyed our talk, and I'm sure the viewers did too.
Me too. I did. Thank you so much for having me.
So if you want to learn more about Elizabeth or HiBnb, check out Experience HiBnb on all social channels, and also make sure to check out the website HiBnb.ca or HiBnb.life. And if you like this kind of content, then make sure to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe to the Entrepreneur Suite. And if you want to know more about me, this show, or the Entrepreneur Suite, go to theentrepreneursuite.com. And of course, join me again next week. My guest then will be a Facebook ads expert, and we'll have a talk about how to get more clients with online ads. So thank you for being here with us today, and I hope to see you all again next week. Bye, everyone.